This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for theories, queries, lots of information. Steve, you haven't been around for a while, and I've been missing some of your new theories and queries. But today, we're going to take our listeners a little bit back because you've written these three you're going to talk about over a period of years, right?
That's correct, Sharon. How are you, by the way?
Good I'm doing just fine.
Good. Yeah, the first couple of them I wrote a while back, my early years of doing this, and the third one I want to talk about is actually the very last one that I wrote, the more recent one. So it does span a couple of years. I don't know. Maybe you'll notice something in my writing style. So maybe hopefully some improvement over the years. But yeah, definitely. Most of what I do is kind of social commentary, things that I see, things that I notice, things that I'm thinking about. Today, it's a little lighter, more about family, my daughter's family. Just thought I'd kind of lighten things up a little bit with a couple of theories today. So,
okay.
So here we go. We're going to start with theory 31, the G word. My dad was a pretty funny guy. At 5'1" tall and about $180, he was a ball of fire, always yelling, screaming, annoying waitresses, and in general doing his best to embarrass us. Classic little guy syndrome. Had to prove to everybody how tough he was, and he was. But it wasn't until about the time that his children started having children that I saw another side of it. Gentle, loving, great with babies. Unless one of them happened to call him the G word, Grandpa. Talk about don't poke the bear, theory number 25. You see, as much as he loved kids and grandkids, he couldn't accept the concept of being a grandparent. He never wanted to admit to himself that he was that old. So he made them call him Pete, which was even funnier because his real name was Epitacio. I guess he figured it was just a lot easier to pronounce. So fast forward 50 years, and I have become his legacy, at least in that regard. None of the new generation of my people are allowed to call me Grandpa, Gramps, or anything else that starts with a G. Nor do I call them my grandkids. I call them my daughter's kids. And they call me Pops. The older ones do, at least, the 8 and 10-year-olds. The babies, the 5-year-old twins, call me Popsy. Not my idea, but they kind of do their own things their own way, those two. I still prefer Pops, but it's a hell of a lot better than the G word, Grandpa. So I just, it's just, if I'm again following the tradition of my dad. It's just something I just never, even when I was younger and I had kids, the idea of being called Grandpa just didn't sit in with me. So it had to be something else.
It's interesting because I remember a conversation like this when my oldest brother, Gary, who got married. His in-laws had this, I want to call it a fear of getting older. Okay. They didn't want to be called grandma, grandpa. Yet my parents couldn't wait to be called Bubby and Zadie, the Yiddish names for grandma and grandpa. And when Gary's first child was born, I remember his mother-in-law at the time was just so adamant. And, I called my grandparents, grandma and grandpa, Bubby, Zadie. I mean, that to me was an honor.
Right.
But our society has changed. It's very, very true because grandparents, for the most part, don't look like what your grandparents look like and what my grandparents look like. Our grandparents looked old probably when they were 40.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And many of us are becoming grandparents, when we're 60, 70 years old.
Right.
And at that point, we don't want to be old.
Right. It's kind of a bummer. I mean, I love being a grandparent. I mean, I love it. We have so much fun with my daughter's kids, and it's great. I never thought anything about it, but it's just the name. I mean, just for me, it was just what you're thinking about, what do I want them to call me? You think about that stuff. What do I want them to call me? And a lot of times they'll call you whatever they feel like calling you.
Right.
You want one thing and they'll just, lock onto something else, like I wanted Pops for all of them, but the little ones, are going to call me Popsy no matter what I tell them, probably till the day I die.
Oh,
They're going
I'm
to call me
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So, what are you going to do? But I mean, that's close enough. That's close enough. But yeah, it was just something that kind of stuck to me. You take a lot of things from your parents, and some good, some bad. And this was kind of, I wasn't trying to take it from them. I didn't consciously say, he's right. I want to try that. It was the same. I mean, I had that same feeling, don't
Sure.
call me grandpa for whatever reason, maybe it's vanity, maybe whatever, but just never liked the sound of it, just wanted something different. So,
Well, and you know what? It just shows how special we all are. Okay. Especially when our grandkids develop a name for us. Okay. So
right.
as I mentioned, my brother Gary, his daughter called his father Guppy. Okay. And because they had not used grandpa, but they didn't know where Guppy came from, but until the day he died. And even now, when she refers to him, she refers to him as Guppy.
Wow. Wow.
So, sometimes that's a little, more loving when we come up with these names. So you'll like Popsy, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll grow on me. I'm sure over the years, they'll be 30 years old calling me that, 40 years old calling me that, it's okay. It's okay. I joke about it, but it was fun when they first discovered what a nickname was, and that they could kind of think up a name for somebody
Sure.
or something and on their own, and they didn't have to, call somebody this, especially the twins, they're in their own world, and they, do things their own way. But when they discovered the concept of, well, I could call that, I can call that, call him that. And they thought that was just the coolest, that they could,
sure.
they had a little say in it. So it's fun. It's fun. I dig it.
So what's our next one today?
The next one is theory 11. Let me dig it out here. Let's see. Yeah, this is something, theory number 11, the baby whisperer. This is something that I discovered when I had kids.
Okay.
And you're a parent and you don't know what you're doing, and you've read the books, and you kind of got to do things your own way. People to give you advice, people tell you what's what. But putting the kids to sleep was a tough one for us. I mean, sometimes they're colicky, sometimes they make a lot of racket. It's tough to get kids to sleep. So this one's called the baby whisperer, just about a couple of things I learned back in the day.
Okay.
I've always liked little kids, other people's, mine, my daughter's. I've often heard people say that the coolest thing about being a grandparent is that you can have as much fun with them as you want, get them all wired up, and then give them back to their parents. All the fun and little of the responsibility. Kind of a selfish mentality, but they're completely missing the point. That is not the coolest thing about being a grandparent, the whole grandparent gig. The best part is that while the parents are still in the learning process of how to manage that little bundle, you're the pro. When they don't want to eat, you can get them to eat. When they don't want to bathe, you can get them soapy. When they're crying and won't sleep, it's Pops to the rescue. For example, getting them to sleep. That can be one of the hardest things a parent can do, but not if you realize that babies have an innate preference for certain types of music. After years of unofficial personal research on what music is most likely to put a baby to sleep, I have ascertained that baby girls prefer show tunes and baby boys prefer Western songs. And neither wants to be sung to. It has to be hummed. I'm not saying babies don't like to be sung to, because they do. What I'm saying is that when they're fussy and squirmy and they just can't seem to get comfortable, humming does the trick. For the girls, I recommend On the Street Where You Live, My Fair Lady, Feed the Birds, Mary Poppins, and pretty much anything from the Music Man. For the boys, when I say Western, I don't mean country. I mean old-timey Western, Red River Valley, and I've been working on the railroad, and Go Tell Aunt Rhody. Place your baby on your shoulder with your head up against theirs, hum these tunes softly and slowly over and over. The little ones will drop off into a peaceful slumber. And their parents will say, how'd you do that? And you'll say, I'm a grandparent. It's what I do.
You know, it's interesting when you read the theories. Obviously, when you send them to me, I read them, I post them, and they take on a different meaning sometimes. But as I was listening, and you said boys like Westerns, when we had our youngest, my husband and I, um, he lost his job. I went back to work. So he was a stay at home dad for the first year. And he would feed him lunch. And after lunch, Bonanza came on TV. Now, my husband loves all the old programs. If it's a new program, forget it. He's not going to watch it. But our son would get fussy after he ate. And so my husband would walk around the room humming the tune to the Bonanza theme song and out like a light. Um, and so as I'm hearing you read this and sort of picturing you walking around with your grandchild, their head up on your shoulder, it's that vibration from the humming
Right.
that
Right.
does it. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's and that it's tactile. They feel you against them and they feel the humming through you. I just think it's just a little bit more effective in that scenario. Yeah, they like to be sung to and at different times, but when they're fussy, they want to be swaddled, they want to be held close, and that somehow that humming works. The humming works. And I remember when my son was born, his days and nights were completely swapped. He was sleeping all day long, all day long. I used to work, different shifts back then. I'd come home at midnight from a swing shift, and it would be like tick tick. His lights would come on, and he'd be wide awake for the next 8 hours.
Right.
And we'd be, back, this was late 80s, MTV's on, and we're watching videos, we're trying to figure out, what the heck we're doing.
Sure.
And some of the music he liked, some of it he didn't, and we whatever. But just over the course of time, you try different things and different types of music and different songs, and some things just come into your head. I like musicals. I've always liked musicals, and I'm trying to think of something to sing to them or hum to them, and those came into your head, or silly thing, Western song, you go tell Aunt Rhody,
Right.
or I've been working on, and all of a sudden those kind of songs worked, and I'm like, well, maybe this was a fluke, so I stuck with that type of that genre, and it worked. And then when my daughter came around, those didn't work. So I'm trying different things. I locked onto the show tunes, and boom, that was it. So I was at a function, I don't know, maybe about a year ago, just before around the time I wrote this, and there was a baby there fussing, and this and that, and I volunteered to walk around with him, and they thought, well, you're kind of crazy because he's nuts. He's just gonna cry no matter what you do.
Right.
But yeah, if you want him, the parents are like, take him. So they went off to do things. It was a big house, so nobody was watching. So I just walked around with him and did my thing, sang my tune, and then he fell asleep right away. And the party was going on, there was a lot of noise, so he was out like a light. And I put him in one of the bedrooms and kind of pushed all the cushions and pillows around him, so he was fine. I walked back in, I get a beer, and they're just looking at me like, "Where's my kid?" He's go to the other room. He's out cold, And they went in there and checked it out. That's when they were kind of teasing me about being the baby whisperer. So, I mean, it works. I mean, I don't know. It's not going to work every time for every kid, but I just thought it was kind of cool that I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But that type of thing can work for kids, and I guess I don't freak out either. Like I said in the theory, new parents are kind of trying to figure things out, and they don't know what's going to work and what isn't. And as a grandparent, you're the man. I mean, you've seen it all, you've done it all. No amount of poop in that diaper is going to freak you out.
Right.
No amount of anything is going to freak you out. Even just the constant crying over and over. You're just like, you've been there, you've been to worse than that. You've always seen worse than whatever they have, and you can handle it. And maybe it's that calm approach, that has something to do with it too. Like, you're not afraid. You don't show them fear. Do not show fear. You just relax and do your thing. And it seems to work. Seems to
Well,
work.
and I think also as a grandparent, you know that if you can't handle it, mom and dad are there and you're going to hand that baby back.
Right.
Um, and,
Right.
my mother in law was terrific with my youngest son, but there were times that you could just see it in her face. And I would just go over to her and say, okay, I'll take him back.
Right.
Because she wanted to do it right all the time. But, our babies are human and they don't like the same thing over and over again. So,
Yeah. And sometimes they just want their parents, I mean,
oh,
the older kids, the 8 and 10-year-olds, they come over, and they're fine and everything's fine. All of a sudden, one of them will go into a little funk and it's like, I just want my mom, I just want her around. We love you guys, you're great, it's fun to go. But like right now, I just want my mom,
sure.
and that's natural. It's normal. But
Absolutely.
yeah, there's not much you can do about it. Just kind of calm them down. Wait, till we hear, they'll come. But yeah, kids are a whole different animal right there.
Absolutely. So I
Uh,
meant to ask you after the last theory.
mm.
So your grandkids, have a special name for you. Do they have a special name for your wife, their grandmother?
They do. They call her May May. And she and I go back and forth about the spelling. She wants to spell it ME-ME. And when she writes about it and emails people, and I'm thinking ME is like more like meme. Now that there's memes out there.
Right.
So I always put it MAY-MEY just phonetically so people will say May May when I'm writing it. But yeah, that's what she wanted to be called. And luckily they didn't change it for her, at least, give her the silly name. They
I
saved that
love
for
it.
me. But yeah, but that's what she wanted to be called. Her parents were her grandparents were Granddad and Grammy, right? And her sisters, one of her sister likes to be called that, Grammy, and so the Granddad and Grammy, that's kind of tradition in her family. But I wanted Pops. She, for whatever reason, she wanted May May, and it works. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
So you have one more for us.
I have one more. I do. This one, like I said, this one was the last one I wrote to you. Not so much a theory, more of a kind of a social commentary. Somebody said that I read it to, and they said, well, you could, turn the concept of it into a theory. It's a story, but you could go deeper into the concept if you wanted to, and it's kind of a long story anyway. But it's just something that happened, and I really wanted to put it on paper, and it just kind of struck me, and it does follow this theme today of family. So we're going to do the very last one I wrote to you, Theory 49, and it's called $2. After a moderately shitty day at work and an even shittier drive home, I arrived at my house to find my wife surrounded by the babies, my daughter's kids, a 10-year-old boy, 8-year-old girl, and 5-year-old twins. The occasional scheduling conflict between my daughter and her husband often ends up with a surprise visit from the four of them. It could be for anywhere from an hour to most of the day. Some visits are pretty out of the blue, but we certainly enjoy the company. On this day, after peeling the kids off my body one by one from their initial greeting, their parents came and got them before I had much of a chance to engage. After I left, I noticed 2 $1 bills on the counter and asked my wife about it. She smiled and said, sit down, and I'll tell you. She proceeded to tell me that at one point in the day, Georgie, the male twin, came up to her, took out his little wallet and handed her 2 $1 bills and said, this is for you, May May. My wife said, well, thank you, Georgie, but you don't have to give that to me. Why don't you just keep it and buy yourself something fun? He was crestfallen. He dropped his head, did his best sad face emoji. And my wife said, what's wrong, sweetie? He told her that he wanted her to have it because she always does such fun things with them, like going to the pool and getting Slurpees and playing games, and that the money was his way of thanking her for being so nice to them all the time. She smiled at him and said, that is so sweet. and generous of you, Georgie. Thank you very much. And she took the money. He grinned from ear to ear. Then he reached back into his wallet, pulled out $2 more. He said, give this to Pops. He always makes sure we have a good time when we're here too. My wife told him that she would put the money on the counter and tell me about it when I got home. I looked at the $2 he left me. To him, it must have seemed like 100, but he wanted us to have it because he recognized how much we try to do for him and the rest of his family. The love and adoration of a 5-year-old, like a small bright light in an all too often dark world. Sometimes we're so consumed with the day-to-day grind, we forget to see and appreciate what's right in front of us. Suddenly, my shitty day wasn't so shitty. The car problems, the bill collectors blowing up my phone, none of that mattered, because in his own wise beyond his kindergarten years way, little Georgie was telling me, don't worry, Pops, I got your back.
Wow. See, it's obvious that your grandkids are brought up with a good sense of love. Because for a 5-year-old to pick up on that, that is terrific. And no 5-year-old wants to give up something that belongs to them.
Yeah.
I don't think we give our kids and our grandkids sometimes the acceptance that they need. And I say that as a mother who had her first child in her early 20s, when all my friends were having kids. In some ways, I think I was a better mother initially because I had all these role models around me. When I had my youngest son, I'm sorry, number one, there's a 15-year difference between him and his brother. Most of my friends, their kids were now starting to go off to college. Okay.
Right.
And here I had an infant that I so desperately wanted, thinking everything I learned before I was going to use now. And that wasn't the case. And as I watched my boys as they grew up, they were totally different as youngsters. But now that they are grown men, they're so similar.
Yeah.
You know? And so as I, just picture your 4 grandkids, and first of all, twins are always going to be different than an individual child.
Right.
And the individual children sometimes are going to be maybe a little quieter because the twins are going to get more notice.
Yeah.
They are.
That's true. Yeah, and I think you're with your sons. It was a different era and a different, almost a different kind of generation.
Right.
A decade apart. There's different things going on in your life and their life, but they got the main message. They got your main, love and affection and parenting. The
Right.
basic of that came through. Obviously, and I'm sure you did a great job, and they understood it. They understood it. But yeah, what threw me about Georgie is that he at 5 he just seemed to get the concept of not just love, but okay, we love you and we're doing these things for you because we love you, and the appreciation. Little kids, oh, that's great, give me this, give me that, give me candy, give me presents. I love going over to Pops and Mamie because we have fun and we do this and that. But for him to want to pay it back, and money for them is, $2 is $100,
Right.
and then he's got a little wallet, and he keeps it in there, a little change in the pocket. And so it was like, what could I, like he actually had the thought, what could I do for them that would show my appreciation? The thought process involved blew me away. So I walk in the house and there's $2 sitting there, and then I hear the story from my wife, and it's like, it just shocks you into another time zone. I'm whining about work and travel and this and that, cost of gas, and here's this 5-year-old just dropping his bomb on us that he gets it, that he loves us, that he knows that we love him, and he appreciates it, and this is what he wants to do for us. It was just, wild, and that I just had to write it down as soon as I heard it. So, so that was the last one that I sent you. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah. What I think is interesting when you write these, everybody can take them to fit their own lifestyle, which I think is very, very important, because you might read this 5 years from now and even see it differently.
Right.
But what I'm hoping our listeners are going to hear from this is that it's not unusual for us to have bad days. It's not unusual for us to think that the sky is falling in on top of us. In fact, I had a day like that yesterday. My son has been up for a promotion. Everybody kept telling him, you got it, you got it, you got it. Don't worry, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then yesterday he found out, no, it's not going to happen. And so as a parent to an adult child, I tried not to get his hopes up, but I saw that he was getting excited, and I didn't want him to think I wasn't excited for him.
Right.
But then when this all happened yesterday, it was like, oh, now how do I communicate with him? I'm hurting as much as he's hurting, or differently. And I started using that as an excuse for my behaviors. And it was last evening, my husband was traveling out of town, and I, was talking to him, and I said, okay, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I got to believe that. There's going to be something good about this. Right now, it hurts. Okay. But I can't worry about, as you said in the beginning, the bill collector, it being cold, or weather not being right, or COVID all around us. I have to find that one good thing.
Right.
And you found it in your grandson.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was pretty, kind of enlightened of you to just kind of get that on your own. I mean, for me, I kind of had to be shocked into it, that the story kind of snapped me out of my funk. I mean, you kind of got yourself out of it, which is great. It's that's not easy to do. It's not easy to do, because you can easily wallow in some of these things and just, keep yourself down. I mean, you've heard some of my theories, so get kind of angry, kind of bitter, from time to time, and they kind of weigh on you. But, this is part of my way of venting too, writing them down and doing the podcast and all helps me, read them again, go through it again, experience those things again, and kind of let them go, not let them bug me too much. But yeah, it's not easy to pull yourself out of that mindset, when there's so many things bringing you down, and it's I was just lucky to have them. I'm lucky to be kind of that he allowed me to do that, and it allowed me to appreciate once again, them, and having them around. And kids are kids. These kids are 5, your kids are 30, 40. It's just, the kids are kids. You're going to feel the same way about them no matter what, their ups and downs. You're still the parent. You still love them. They're still your kids. They don't look like kids anymore, but they're yours. And you know it. You feel it. You got that that instinct for them. That's
and
good.
It's interesting you say that, because I still remember when my mother was in her last stages of life and still a little bit coherent with us. People would say to her, so Dorothy, how many children do you have? And she'd say 6. She had 3, but she'd say 6. And my middle brother, Joel, was always the apple of her life. And so it was Joel, Gary, Joel. Well, that added up to 6, but where was I? And I remember one day asking her, and she said, oh, my troublemaker. And it was like, really? I was the troublemaker? And so I called my brother Gary. My brother Joel was at the house, and I said, and why does she say that? And they said, something must have happened somewhere in your life, and that's one memory she has. But right now, she's not at a point to tell you. But she always called us She always called me her baby. And my brothers, her big sons. I was 66 when my mother passed away, and I was still her baby. And I
Right,
still reflect on that. That's okay. That's how we
right.
see our children. And the big thing is just, learning how to accept each other and find the good in each other. And you certainly do when you write these. So we
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So are we going to have some more theories coming through here soon?
Yes, yes, you are. I have a couple almost done. I'm going to send them to you, hopefully, maybe even before the year's out. But I'm going to
Okay.
try to get back on my pace. I was at a pretty good pace for a while, and I slacked off a little bit. So, but they're back. I think this one, the thing with my theories in my head, I'm always worried. I've done so many now. I've done close to 50, and I kept thinking, God, I'm going to run dry. I'm going to run out of ideas, and things like this happen, and boom, there it is. And I think for me, I just always have to keep open to what's out there, and jot things down, even if it's not a theory, just jot things down, and it helps me kind of bring things together. So yeah, I'm in the zone. So I'm ready. I'm ready to keep going now.
Well, we're looking forward to it because 2022 can't be any worse than 2020 or 2021.
Yeah.
We have to make some headway. And so maybe sharing some of our thoughts will be helpful.
Yeah, we're definitely due.
Very good. Well, have
Okay.
a great day. Happy holidays, and we'll talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon.
Thank
Bye-bye
you. We'll
now.
see you around. Bye.